The emergency beacon cut through the void like a scream in the dark. Admiral Zara Voss stood on the bridge of the USS Prometheus, her weathered hands gripping the command rail as the alien distress signal played for the third time. "That's definitely not one of ours," Commander Jake Morrison said, his fingers dancing across the communications console. The signal was unlike anything in their databases, a complex pattern of harmonics that seemed to pulse with genuine desperation. "Analysis?" Voss asked, her gray eyes fixed on the viewscreen showing the star-scattered darkness ahead. "Origin point is approximately 47 light-years from Earth, in the Kepler 442 system," Morrison replied. "The signal is unusual. It's not just a distress call. There's something else embedded in it." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the fleet's xenolinguist, looked up from her translation console. "Admiral, I've been working on this for the past 6 hours. The basic message is clear, they're asking for help. But the underlying data suggests they're not just in trouble. They're terrified." Voss nodded slowly. The Terran Federation had been exploring the galaxy for nearly 2 centuries, but first contact situations were still rare and delicate. Most alien civilizations they'd encountered had been peaceful, if cautious. A few had been hostile, but none had ever sent a distress signal directly to Earth. "How do they even know about us?" Morrison wondered aloud. "That's what worries me," Voss said. "Signal the fleet. We're changing course to investigate." The human armada was impressive by any standard. 12 battleships, 8 cruisers, and 24 destroyers, the largest expedition fleet ever assembled by the Terran Federation. They'd been on a routine exploration mission to survey potential colony worlds when the alien signal reached them. As the ships adjusted their trajectory, Voss couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger than a simple rescue operation. 3 days later, the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they found defied every protocol in the book. "Jesus Christ," Morrison breathed, staring at the tactical display. The system was a war zone. Debris fields stretched across millions of kilometers, the shattered remains of what had once been a thriving civilization. But it wasn't the destruction that made Voss's blood run cold, it was what was causing it. "Are those ships?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Massive, organic-looking vessels moved through the system like predators. They were unlike anything in human databases, dark, twisted things that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As the fleet watched, one of the creatures latched onto a small moon and began feeding. "Admiral," Dr. Vasquez's voice was tight with fear. "I'm receiving another transmission. It's coming from the third planet." The viewscreen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at their first alien face. The being was humanoid but clearly not human, pale blue skin, large dark eyes, and delicate features that spoke of a species that had never known violence. When it spoke, the universal translator struggled to keep up. "Please, you came. I am Counselor Theron of the Valkyrie Republic. We sent the signal hoping, praying that someone would hear us. The Devourers came 3 months ago. They've consumed 4 of our worlds already. We're the last." Voss stepped forward. "This is Admiral Zara Voss of the Terran Federation. We received your distress signal. What exactly are these Devourers?" Theron's expression was one of pure terror. "Ancient things. Older than our civilization, older than most. They sleep in the void between galaxies, and wake only when they sense abundance. They consume everything, matter, energy, even the quantum foam itself. Nothing stops them. Nothing even slows them down." "How many are there?" Morrison asked. "In this system?" "Perhaps 50 of the smaller ones, 12 of the larger." "But Admiral, this is just a scouting force. If they succeed here, they'll call others. Thousands of others." The bridge fell silent. Voss stared at the tactical display, watching the alien ships, the Devourers, move through the system like a plague. She'd seen war before, had fought in the Centauri conflict and the Sirius campaign, but this was different. This was extinction-level threat. "Counselor Theron," she said finally, "what do you know about human military capabilities?" The alien looked confused. Your species is listed in our databases as emerging, but we know little beyond that. You've only had interstellar travel for 2 centuries. Your technology is primitive compared to ours.
Is it now? Voss smiled grimly. Commander Morrison, signal the fleet.
Battle stations. All ships, prepare for combat.
Admiral, Morrison said quietly, are you sure about this? We don't know what we're dealing with.
No, Voss agreed. But they asked for help.
And we're humans.
We don't run from monsters, we make them run from us. The first wave of devourers detected the human fleet within hours. 3 of the smaller creatures, each the size of a city, broke off from their feeding and moved toward the newcomers with predatory grace.
All ships, this is Admiral Voss.
These things have been bullying civilizations for who knows how long.
Time to show them what happens when they mess with a Deathworld species.
Prometheus, target the lead creature with everything we have. The human ships opened fire as one.
Plasma cannons, particle beams, and kinetic projectiles lit up the darkness.
The lead devourer absorbed the first volley without apparent damage, its organic hull rippling like water.
No effect, Morrison reported. Weapons are completely ineffective.
Then we get creative, Voss said. Launch the Aegis missiles.
Full spread.
The Aegis system was humanity's newest weapon, not a traditional missile, but a self-replicating nanite swarm designed to consume enemy ship hulls. As the swarm impacted the devourer, something unexpected happened. The creature screamed. It was a sound that transcended physical space, a psychic shriek that made every human on the bridge clutch their heads.
But more importantly, the nanites were working. The devourer's hull began to dissolve, its organic armor no match for self-replicating technology.
My God, Dr. Vasquez whispered.
They're not invulnerable.
They're just old.
Their defenses are designed for energy weapons and brute force.
They've never encountered anything like our nanites.
The dying devourer thrashed in space, its death throes sending shockwaves through the quantum foam.
The other 2 creatures hesitated, and in that moment of uncertainty, Voss knew they had a chance. All ships, launch Aegis missiles.
Full spread. Let's see how they like a taste of human ingenuity.
The battle was over in minutes. The 3 devourers dissolved into cosmic dust, their ancient bodies unable to cope with technology they'd never encountered.
But Voss knew this was just the beginning.
Counselor Theron, she said, opening a channel to the Valkyrie planet.
We've eliminated the scouts. But you said there were larger ones?
The alien's face appeared on screen, hope and disbelief warring in his expression.
Yes, but Admiral, how did you? No one has ever successfully fought the devourers before. They've consumed entire galactic civilizations. They've never fought humans before, Voss said simply. Now, about those larger ones.
The real battle began 6 hours later. The larger devourers, each the size of a small moon, emerged from the system's outer planets where they'd been feeding.
These were different from the scouts. Ancient beyond measure, their hulls scarred by cosmic radiation and eons of warfare, they moved with the confidence of apex predators.
Admiral, Morrison said, his voice tight, I'm reading massive energy signatures.
These things are. God, they're powerful.
Energy output is off the charts.
How many? Voss asked. 12, as Counselor Theron said.
But Admiral, our nanite weapons might not be as effective against these older ones.
They're already adapting their defenses.
Voss studied the tactical display.
The devourers were spreading out, trying to surround the human fleet.
It was a classic predator strategy, isolate and destroy.
Signal the fleet. Formation Delta 7. We're going to show them something they've never seen before.
Formation Delta 7 was a human innovation, a 3-dimensional combat formation that took advantage of humanity's unique ability to think in terms of guerrilla warfare. While most spacefaring civilizations fought in orderly lines, humans had learned to fight dirty. The fleet scattered, each ship taking a different vector. To the devourers, it must have looked like panic. They moved to exploit what they saw as chaos, diving into the scattered formation to pick off individual ships.
That's when the trap was sprung. Now!
Voss shouted. The human ships hadn't scattered randomly, they'd positioned themselves in a carefully calculated pattern. As the Devourers dove in, they found themselves surrounded by overlapping fields of fire. But more than that, the humans had learned something important from the first engagement.
Initiate quantum resonance cascade, Voss ordered.
It was a desperate gambit based on Dr. Vasquez's analysis of the Devourer physiology. The creatures existed partially in normal space and partially in quantum dimensions. By creating a resonance cascade using their ship's FTL drives, the humans could theoretically destabilize the dual existence. The space around the Devourers began to shimmer and twist. The ancient creatures, for the first time in eons, experienced something they'd never felt before: uncertainty. Their quantum signatures flickered, and in that moment of vulnerability, the human fleet struck. This time, it wasn't just nanites. The humans used everything: antimatter torpedoes, singularity bombs, even ramming attacks when ammunition ran low. The USS Defiant, her hull breached and life support failing, crashed directly into one of the larger Devourers, her fusion reactor overloading on impact. The explosion lit up half the system. When the quantum cascade finally stabilized, 8 of the 12 Devourers had been destroyed.
The remaining 4, wounded and confused, began to withdraw toward the system's edge. Let them go, Voss ordered when Morrison suggested pursuit.
We need to regroup and figure out what we're really dealing with. But the Devourers weren't retreating. They were calling for help. The response came 3 days later. The space at the edge of the system began to ripple and tear as something massive forced its way through from whatever dark dimension the Devourers called home. "Admiral," Morrison said, his voice barely above a whisper, "you need to see this." The thing that emerged from the quantum rift was beyond description. It was less a ship than a living cosmic horror, a Devourer so old and vast that it had become something else entirely. Tentacles of dark matter stretched across light years, and its psychic presence was so overwhelming that half the fleet's crew had to be sedated.
"That's not possible," Dr. Vasquez breathed. "The mass readings, it's larger than most stars." "Counselor Theron," Voss said, opening a channel to the Valkyrie planet, "what the hell is that thing?"
The alien's image flickered on screen, but his usual composure was completely gone.
"The eldest," he whispered. "The first Devourer.
It's been asleep for millions of years.
We thought it was a myth. How do we kill it?" Voss asked bluntly. "You don't," Theron replied. "No one has ever even hurt the eldest.
It consumed the progenitor empire, the stellar collective, the quantum dynasties.
Civilizations that made ours look primitive. Admiral, you need to run. Take your fleet and run before it notices you." But it was too late. The eldest had already turned its attention to the human fleet. When it spoke, its voice echoed through subspace, a sound like dying galaxies. "Unusual," it said, the word carrying undertones of curiosity and hunger. "A young species that fights. Most flee or surrender. You killed my children. This requires examination." Tendrils of dark energy reached out from the eldest, wrapping around the human ships like cosmic spider webs. The USS Hermes, caught in the creature's grip, simply ceased. Not destroyed, not consumed, erased from existence as if it had never been. "All ships," Voss said, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her mind, "prepare for quantum jump. We're leaving." But the eldest was faster. Space itself seemed to congeal around the human fleet, preventing their escape. They were trapped with something that had been killing civilizations since before Earth's sun was born. "Admiral," Morrison said, "quantum drives are offline. We can't jump." Voss stared at the tactical display. Her fleet was powerful, but against something like the eldest, they were gnats facing a hurricane. But humans had faced impossible odds before. "Dr. Vasquez," she said, "what do you know about the eldest's physiology?" It's not entirely physical," the xenolinguist replied. "Most of its mass exists in quantum dimensions. It anchors itself to normal space through psychic projections. That's how it's holding us here." "Psychic projections," Voss repeated. "What happens if we disrupt those projections?" Theoretically, it would be forced back into quantum space. But Admiral, the psychic energy required to maintain its existence is enormous. We'd need to generate an equal and opposite psychic force, and humans aren't psychic.
No, Voss said slowly, but we're stubborn.
And we're angry. And we're really, really good at not giving up.
She opened a fleet-wide channel.
All ships, this is Admiral Voss.
I'm about to ask you to do something that probably breaks every law of physics and common sense. That thing out there has been terrorizing civilizations for millions of years. It thinks we're just another species to be consumed.
Time to show it what humans do to bullies. What happened next would be debated by xenopsychologists for centuries.
The human fleet, faced with impossible odds and certain death, did something that no other species had ever attempted.
They got mad. Not just angry, furious.
The collective rage of 12,000 humans, all focused on a single target, created something unprecedented in galactic history. The eldest, accustomed to fear and despair, suddenly found itself facing an emotion it had never encountered on such a scale.
Pure, undiluted human spite. The psychic backlash was immediate.
The eldest's grip on normal space flickered, and in that moment of weakness, the human fleet struck with everything they had. Not just weapons, but their ships themselves.
The USS Prometheus, her hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere, rammed directly into one of the eldest's quantum anchor points. The impact shouldn't have done anything.
The eldest was a cosmic entity, and the Prometheus was just a ship. But the ship carried something the eldest had never faced before, the concentrated will of a species that had climbed to the top of a Deathworld food chain through sheer bloody-minded determination.
The eldest screamed.
It was a sound that shattered space itself, a psychic shriek that echoed across dimensions. For the first time in its existence, the ancient horror felt pain.
Real, undeniable pain.
It's working! Dr. Vasquez shouted over the chaos.
The psychic feedback is disrupting its quantum matrix.
But the victory was short-lived.
The eldest, wounded and enraged, began to retreat into quantum space. But before it left, it sent one final message.
Interesting species, it said, its voice carrying undertones of respect and threat.
You have shown me something new. Pain. I will remember this. I will remember you.
The massive creature faded from normal space, leaving behind only the wreckage of the battle and the echoes of its promise.
The human fleet, battered but intact, floated in the sudden silence. Admiral, Morrison said quietly, did we just make an enemy of something that could probably destroy our entire species?
Probably, Voss replied.
But we also just proved that it can be hurt. And if it can be hurt, it can be killed. The aftermath of the battle was unlike anything in galactic history.
Word spread quickly through the interstellar community. A young species from a remote world had not only survived an encounter with the Devourers but had actually driven them off. The Valkyrie were the first to make contact.
Counselor Theron, still shaken by what he'd witnessed, requested a meeting with Admiral Voss.
Your species, he said, his voice filled with awe and terror, you're not like us. You're not like any species we've encountered.
The eldest has consumed civilizations that lasted millions of years, species with technology that bordered on godlike.
But you heard it.
How?
Voss considered the question. Because we're human, she said finally. We're from a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years.
We learned to fight back.
We learned to never give up, no matter how bad things got.
But the psychological pressure, Theron insisted. The eldest psychic presence should have driven your crews insane. How did you resist?
We didn't resist, Voss replied.
We got angry. Really angry. And when humans get angry enough, we do impossible things.
The interview was broadcast across the galaxy, and the response was immediate. Species that had hidden in the shadows for millennia, terrified of the Devourers, began to emerge. The Corvani Federation, the Stellar Dominion, the Hive Collective all reached out to the Terran Federation with the same message.
They wanted to help.
Admiral, Morrison said, reviewing the latest batch of communications, we've got 17 different species offering military assistance.
The Corvani want to share their shield technology. The Stellar Dominion is offering their quantum computers. Even the Hive Collective is willing to provide tactical data. And all they want in return? Voss asked.
For us to teach them how to fight the Devourers.
Voss nodded. It made sense. For the first time in galactic history, someone had proven that the Devourers could be beaten.
The other species wanted to learn how. But teaching other species to fight like humans was easier said than done.
The next few months were a crash course in human military doctrine for dozens of alien civilizations.
The key, Voss explained to a gathering of alien military leaders, is not to fight their fight. Don't try to match their technology or their power.
Fight your fight.
Use your advantages. The Valkyrie, with their advanced quantum manipulation technology, learned to disrupt Devourer anchor points. The Corvani, master engineers, developed new weapons specifically designed to exploit Devourer weaknesses.
The Hive Collective, with their networked consciousness, proved remarkably resistant to psychic attacks.
But it was the humans who remained the cornerstone of the new alliance. When the Devourers attacked the Rigel system 6 months later, it was human ships that led the counterattack. When they struck at the Vega colonies, it was human tactics that turned the tide.
The galaxy was learning to fight back. But the eldest wasn't idle.
Deep in the quantum void, the ancient horror was doing something it had never done before: planning.
For millions of years, it had relied on brute force and psychological warfare.
Now, faced with a species that seemed immune to fear, it was learning to think strategically.
The first sign of this new approach came in the form of infiltrators.
Devourers that had learned to mimic other species, to hide among them. They struck at supply lines, communication networks, and command structures.
The Alliance's early victories had made them overconfident, and they paid the price.
The Battle of Kepler 90 was a disaster. An entire human task force, supported by Valkyrie quantum ships and Corvani battlecruisers, was destroyed when the Devourers revealed their new tactics. Instead of a direct assault, they had used psychological warfare, turning the allied species against each other. "They're learning," Admiral Voss said grimly, reviewing the battle reports.
"The eldest is teaching them to think like us." "That's not good," Morrison replied. "If they combine their power with human-level tactical thinking,
then we need to stay ahead of them," Voss finished.
Signaled the Alliance. It's time for the next phase.
The next phase was something that would have been impossible before the human arrival: a coordinated strike against the Devourer's home dimension. Using combined human determination, Valkyrie quantum technology, and Corvani engineering, the Alliance had developed a weapon that could punch through the barriers between dimensions. The Quantum Lance, Dr. Vasquez explained to the assembled fleet commanders, is essentially a weaponized reality tear. It creates a temporary bridge between our dimension and the Devourer realm. But the window will only last minutes, and we'll be fighting on their home ground.
"How many ships can we send through?" asked Commander Zektar of the Corvani fleet. 50, maximum, Voss replied. "Any more and the dimensional stress will collapse the bridge. We get one shot at this."
The mission was volunteer only. Despite the odds, every ship in the Alliance fleet volunteered. In the end, Voss selected a mixed force: 20 human ships, 15 Valkyrie, 10 Corvani, and 5 from the Hive Collective. The Quantum Lance was activated at the edge of the Centauri system, far from any inhabited worlds. The tear in reality was beautiful and terrible, a wound in space itself that revealed the twisted landscape of the Devourer realm.
"Remember," Voss said as the fleet prepared to cross over, "we're not trying to win a war. We're trying to send a message. The eldest wants to play psychological games? Let's show it what happens when you try to outthink a species that invented paranoia." The transit was horrific.
The Devourer realm was a place where physics worked differently, where space and time were fluid concepts. Ships that were separated by meters in normal space found themselves light years apart in the twisted geography of the void.
But the Alliance had planned for this.
Using quantum entanglement communicators, they maintained coordination despite the spatial distortion. The Valkyrie ships, with their quantum manipulation technology, served as anchors, keeping the fleet together as they dove into the heart of the Devourer realm.
they found the eldest waiting for them.
The ancient horror had grown since their last encounter, feeding on the fear and despair of the civilizations it had consumed. It was no longer merely large, it was cosmic in scale, a living galaxy of malevolent intelligence.
You came, it said, its voice echoing through dimensions. Curious. I expected you to flee after Kepler 90. Instead, you invade my realm. Why?
Because we're human, Voss replied, her voice carrying across the fleet's communication network.
And humans don't run from monsters. We hunt them. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The Alliance fleet, hopelessly outnumbered in fighting in an environment that violated every natural law, somehow held their own.
The Valkyrie ships phase-shifted through the Eldest's attacks, the Corvani vessels unleashed weapons that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, and the Hive collective ships moved with perfect coordination. But it was the human ships that led the charge. Driven by a combination of tactical brilliance and sheer bloody-minded stubbornness, they carved a path through the Eldest's defenses toward its core. Admiral, Morrison called out, we're losing ships fast. The dimensional stress is tearing them apart. Then we better make this count, Voss replied. All ships, target the Eldest's central consciousness. Everything we have. The combined firepower of 50 ships, enhanced by exotic physics and alien technology, struck the Eldest's core. The ancient horror screamed, its psychic shriek shattering the barriers between dimensions. But this time, the scream carried something new: uncertainty. For the first time in its existence, the Eldest was afraid. The retreat from the Devourer realm was a fighting withdrawal. The Eldest, wounded and enraged, threw everything it had at the escaping fleet. Reality itself seemed to bend around them as the ancient horror sought to trap them in its dying realm. But the Alliance had learned from their mistakes. The quantum lance, still anchored in normal space, provided a beacon for their return. One by one, the surviving ships punched through the dimensional barrier, emerging battered but intact into normal space. The final tally was sobering. 23 ships had been lost, including the USS Valiant with all hands. But they had accomplished something unprecedented: they had wounded the Eldest in its own realm and lived to tell about it. Status report, Voss demanded as the Prometheus limped back to the Centauri system. The dimensional bridge is collapsing, Dr. Vasquez reported. But Admiral, we're reading massive quantum fluctuations from the Devourer realm. The Eldest is changing. Changing how? It's fragmenting. The damage we inflicted is spreading through its quantum matrix. It's either dying or evolving, Voss finished grimly. How long before we know which? Unknown. But Admiral, there's something else. The other Devourers in our galaxy, they're withdrawing. All of them. They're retreating to the galactic rim. Voss stared at the tactical display. After centuries of terror, the Devourers were retreating. But she knew it wasn't over. The Eldest was still out there, and wounded predators were often the most dangerous. Signal the Alliance, she ordered. We need to prepare for the next phase. The Eldest is planning something, and when it comes back, it's going to be different. The next phase came 6 months later, and it was unlike anything they had expected. Instead of a massive invasion, the Eldest sent a single ship, a sleek, elegant vessel that looked nothing like the organic monstrosities the Alliance had fought before. It's requesting communication, Morrison reported, his voice filled with confusion. The ship it's beautiful. Nothing like the other Devourers. Put it through, Voss ordered. The face that appeared on the viewscreen was familiar yet alien. It was the Eldest, but changed. The cosmic horror had taken on a more humanoid form, its features sharp and aristocratic. Admiral Voss, it said, its voice no longer carrying the undertones of cosmic dread. I request parley. Parley? Voss couldn't hide her surprise. You want to talk? I want to understand, the Eldest replied. Your species has shown me things I thought impossible. Pain. Fear. And now, for the first time in my existence, I feel something else. Curiosity. The meeting was held in neutral space, aboard a specially constructed station.
The eldest's avatar, for that's what it was, a quantum projection of the cosmic entity, was surprisingly cordial.
I have consumed civilizations for millions of years, it explained, its voice carrying none of its former menace. I thought I understood intelligence, consciousness, the nature of existence itself.
But your species, you are different. Different how? Voss asked. You adapt.
Every species I have encountered responds to threat in one of three ways: they flee, they surrender, or they fight and die.
But humans, you fight and learn.
You take our weapons and turn them against us. You take our strengths and find ways to make them weaknesses. The eldest leaned forward, its transformed features showing something that might have been respect.
I came to your galaxy expecting to feed. Instead, I found teachers. You have shown me that there is more to existence than consumption. More to consciousness than dominance. So what do you want? Voss asked bluntly. I want to learn.
I want to understand what makes your species so resilient.
And in return, I offer knowledge.
The locations of other devourer fleets. The secrets of dimensional manipulation. The history of civilizations that existed before your son was born.
It was a tempting offer.
The knowledge the eldest possessed could advance galactic civilization by millions of years. But Voss had learned not to trust ancient cosmic entities, even reformed ones.
And the other devourers, she asked. What about them?
They will follow my lead, as they always have. If I choose to study rather than consume, they will do the same.
Your galaxy will be safe. The negotiations took weeks.
The Alliance leadership was divided. Some saw the eldest's offer as genuine, others as an elaborate trap. In the end, it was the humans who made the decision.
We'll accept, Voss announced, but with conditions.
The eldest provides the promised knowledge, but it also helps us prepare for threats we don't know about yet.
And if it ever reverts to its old ways, you will stop me, the eldest finished. Yes, I understand.
Your species has already proven capable of that.
The partnership between the Alliance and the reformed eldest was unlike anything in galactic history.
The ancient entity proved to be a valuable teacher, sharing knowledge that revolutionized everything from faster-than-light travel to quantum mechanics. But it was the psychological insights that proved most valuable. The eldest, having consumed thousands of civilizations, had an unparalleled understanding of the galactic political landscape. It warned the Alliance about the void spawners beyond the galactic rim, the machine collective in the Andromeda galaxy, and the entropy cults that sought to end reality itself. Your galaxy is young, it explained during one of their regular briefings. Most of the threats you will face are still sleeping or unaware of your existence. But they will come, eventually.
And when they do, you will need to be ready.
The Alliance began to prepare. New weapons were developed, new alliances were forged, and new strategies were devised. The humans, with their talent for adaptation and their immunity to despair, became the backbone of galactic defense. But it was Admiral Voss who asked the question that had been haunting her since the first encounter. Why, she asked the eldest during one of their private meetings.
Why were humans the ones to stop you? What makes us so different?
The eldest was quiet for a long moment.
Do you know what I fear most about your species? It asked finally. What? Your compassion. Voss blinked. Our compassion?
Every other species I have encountered, when faced with extinction, focuses only on survival.
But humans, you came to help aliens you had never met. You risked your entire fleet to save a species that considered you primitive.
Even now, you could use the knowledge I've given you to dominate the galaxy, but instead you share it freely.
The eldest's transformed features showed something that might have been sadness.
I have existed for millions of years, Admiral. I have seen civilizations rise and fall, watched species evolve and go extinct.
But I have never seen anything like human compassion. It is both your greatest strength and your greatest weakness. How is it a weakness? Voss asked. Because it makes you vulnerable.
There will be enemies who will exploit your compassion, who will use your desire to help others against you. And someday, that compassion may be the thing that destroys you.
Voss nodded slowly. Maybe. But it's also the thing that saved you, isn't it? If we were just another aggressive species, we would have tried to destroy you completely. Instead, we gave you a chance to change. Yes, the eldest agreed. Your compassion saved me. And perhaps, in return, my knowledge will save you from the darkness that is coming. The first test of the new alliance came 2 years later. The Void Spawners, attracted by the quantum disturbances from the battles with the Devourers, began probing the galactic rim. These creatures were different from the Devourers, not ancient entities seeking to consume, but cosmic parasites that fed on the energy of stars themselves. The Alliance responded with unprecedented coordination. Human tactical doctrine, Valkyrie quantum technology, Corvani engineering, and Hive collective networking, all guided by the eldest's knowledge of extragalactic threats. The Battle of the Rim was fierce but brief. The Void Spawners, expecting to find a galaxy of fragmented, squabbling species, instead encountered a unified defense that had been preparing for their arrival. The Alliance fleet, led by the USS Prometheus II, drove them back into the void between galaxies. But the victory came at a cost. The quantum weapons needed to hurt the Void Spawners left scars in space itself, dead zones where the laws of physics no longer applied. The Alliance had won, but they had also learned that some victories were Pyrrhic. We can't keep doing this, Admiral Voss said during the post-battle briefing. Every time we use these weapons, we damage the fabric of reality itself. Eventually, we'll cause more harm than the threats we're fighting. Then we need to find another way, the eldest replied. Your species has shown remarkable adaptability. Perhaps it is time to adapt beyond warfare. The suggestion led to the Great Project, an ambitious plan to create a galactic defense network that didn't rely on weapons but on detection and deterrence. Using the combined knowledge of all Alliance species, they began construction of a monitoring system that would detect extragalactic threats before they reached inhabited space. The project took 5 years to complete, requiring the cooperation of every species in the Alliance. But when it was finished, the galaxy had something it had never possessed before: early warning against cosmic threats. The real test came when the Machine Collective from Andromeda began their expansion into the Milky Way. Unlike the Devourers or the Void Spawners, the Collective was a technological civilization, artificial intelligences that had replaced their organic creators and sought to convert all matter into computational matrix. The Alliance's response was swift and decisive. But instead of meeting the Collective with force, they tried something unprecedented: negotiation.